The mornings when you wake and something is different, not in the world around you, not yet, but in you. Something has shifted in the deep and quiet architecture of your being, and you cannot name it. And no one around you would believe you if you tried. You simply know. You feel it in the way the light falls differently across the room, the way your breath comes a little easier, in the way a thought that once carried weight now floats free of its chains. And then days pass, perhaps weeks, and the world begins to catch up. A door opens that was sealed for years. A conversation happens that changes the course of everything. A stranger says, your name with opportunity tucked inside it. Something arrives that you had almost stopped believing in. And the people around you call it luck. They call it timing. They shake their heads in that particular way. People do when something good happens that they cannot explain. And they say, well, you were in the right place at the right time. But you know better. You know it wasn't the right place or the right time. It was the right you. Something changed on the inside, and the outside had no choice but to follow. Tonight, I want to tell you what that something is. I want to speak to you about the mechanics of transformation that nobody discusses, the invisible turning that precedes every visible change, a quiet revolution that happens in a person before their life rearranges itself around them. Because the truth, the deep, ancient, terrifying, liberating truth is this. Your life does not change when your circumstances change. Your circumstances change when your life, your inner life, changes first. And most people have it entirely backward. We have been taught from our earliest days to trust what we can see, measure, and verify with our five senses. We have been taught that the physical world is primary, that it is the cause, and our inner life is the effect. We suffer, and we believe it is because our conditions are poor. We grieve, and we point to what was lost. We struggle, and we gesture at the obstacles in front of us. We have built entire philosophies, entire civilizations on this one foundational assumption that the world acts upon us and we respond. I tell you, and I tell you, from the depths of something that cannot be argued away, this assumption is the great inversion. It is the original error. It is the source of more human suffering than any war, any plague, any drought that has ever visited this earth. The world you live in is not cause, it's consequence. What you see around you right now, your circumstances, your relationships, your resources, the quality of your days, is not what is happening to you. It is what has already happened inside you. It is the crystallized form of a former state of consciousness. It is yesterday's interior life, made visible and tangible today. The room you sit in, the life you are living, is a kind of autobiography, not of your actions, but of your assumptions. And here is why this matters so profoundly. Your world is the outpicturing of your inner state. Then the only place transformation can begin is within, not with effort, not with strategy, not with persistence applied to the outer world in the hopes that it will finally bend to your will, but with the silent, radical act of changing what you are assuming to be true about yourself and your life. This is what nobody tells you. This is the thing that changes your life overnight. Assumption is not a thought you choose consciously in a moment of motivation. It is not an affirmation you repeat until you believe it. An assumption, the truest sense, is the feeling of being a certain kind of person in a certain kind of world. It is the texture of your inner life when you are not trying to be anything at all, is what you return to naturally. The way water finds its level, when the performance of the day is done, and you are alone with yourself in the quiet. Most people have never examined their assumptions. They live inside them, the way a fish lives inside water, unaware that there is any other element in which one might exist. Ask a person who struggles financially to close their eyes and simply feel what they believe about money. and they will not describe thoughts. They will describe a feeling, a vague dread, a sense of scarcity, a contraction somewhere behind the sternum, an old familiar tension that has been so constant. They have mistaken it for reality itself. Do not believe they are poor because they have no money. They have no money because, in the deepest wordless layer of their being, they believe themselves to be poor. Money is just the world faithfully reporting back what it has been told. And this is the place where people grow frustrated with teachings like this. As they say, but I don't choose to feel that way. I don't want to feel that way. I have been trying not to feel that way for years, and I understand that frustration. I've sat with it myself. But the misunderstanding is this: you cannot escape an assumption through force. You cannot wrestle yourself free of a belief that lives in the feeling body through sheer will. You can only displace it. Nature abhors a vacuum. Darkness in a room is not driven out by fighting the darkness. It is displaced by bringing in the light. You displace an assumption not by attacking it, but by occupying a new one so fully, so vividly, so feelingly, that the old one simply has no more room to breathe. This is the art. This is the practice. This is why life changes overnight. I want to dwell here for a moment, because this is where most teachings lose the thread. People hear that the inner state creates the outer reality. They immediately begin doing something with their minds. They think positive thoughts. They recite declarations. They build vision boards. They practice gratitude lists. And these are not bad things, not at all, but they remain mostly on the surface, in the layer of the mind that knows it is performing, layer that is aware it is trying. And because that layer is doing the work with a kind of effortful self-consciousness, what it is actually feeling underneath, a deeper place, is the absence of the thing it is reaching for. It is reaching, and the reaching itself broadcasts the message that what is desired is far away and not yet possessed. Neville said it this way, and it is one of the most important things I have ever turned over in my mind. The secret is to feel as though it is already so, not to think about it as though it might become so, not to hope for it with the particular flavor of hope that knows it might not come, but to inhabit imagination, in feeling, in the body's own quiet knowing, the state of one who already possesses it, not the wanting of the thing, the having of it. Do you understand the difference? It is the difference between a man who prays desperately for water and a man who gives thanks for the rain that has already fallen. The one is in the consciousness of drought. The other has moved in some essential way into the consciousness of abundance. And the world, which is always faithful to consciousness, will deliver to each of them exactly what they are being, not what they are asking. Prayer, in the deepest sense, is not petition. It is not asking. It is becoming in feeling what you wish to experience, in fact. This is not a metaphor. This is not poetry. This is a precise and testable description of how the universe actually works. Now I want to speak to you about why change can happen overnight, because everything I have just told you could be misread as an argument for gradual incremental progress, a slow conditioning of the inner life toward better assumptions. And yes, that is one way it happens. But there is another way, and it is more like a lightning strike than a sunrise. There are moments, and perhaps you have known them, when something cracks open inside you, when a realization arrives not gradually, but all at once. When you see something so clearly and completely that you are immediately, irrevocably changed, not the kind of change that requires time to settle in. Change the way a window is changed when it breaks instantly, irreversibly. The structure of it entirely reorganized in a single moment. These moments arrive in different ways for different people. Sometimes they come through suffering so complete that all the old structures of the self give way at once, And in the collapse, something entirely new has room to enter. Sometimes they come through a single sentence, read in a book at exactly the right moment, a sentence that should have meant nothing, but instead lands like a key in a lock that has been waiting. Everything opens. Sometimes they come in the hypnagogic state between sleeping and waking, when the censor of the rational mind has stepped aside and the deeper imagination is fully accessible. In every case, what has happened is this. A fundamental assumption has shifted, not a surface thought, not a mood, the foundational feeling of what is possible, of who you are, of what the world is willing to yield to you, has undergone a revolution. And from that moment, the outer world begins its faithful rearrangement. This is why the change can seem to others as though it came from nowhere. This is why they say you were lucky. You were in the right place. The stars aligned. They cannot see what happened inside you on the night that everything turned. They only see the morning that came after. I want to say something now. That is perhaps the most important thing I will say tonight. You have a story about why your life is the way it is. Everyone does. It is a story made of events, things that happened to you, things that were done to you, things that were taken from you, or never given to you in the first place. In this story, the events are the cause, and you are the effect. You are what life has made you. I do not wish to be unkind in saying this. I must say it plainly. That story, however true its facts, is a prison, not because the events did not happen. They did not because the pain was not real, it was, because the story assigns causality to the wrong place. It makes the outer world the sculptor of the inner world. And as long as you believe that, remain forever at the mercy of whatever the outer world decides to do next. The truth is more radical and more merciful than that story allows. You were not made by what happened to you. You were made by what you assumed in response to what happened to you. And the extraordinary gift encoded in that truth is this. Assumption can change. It can change now. It can change tonight. It does not require the events of the past to be undone. It does not require an apology that may never come, a wound that may never fully close, a loss that cannot be restored. It only requires you to turn your face, in feeling, toward a different inner sky. There is a man who was broken by the same circumstances that made another man strong. Same external events, entirely different assumptions in response. The difference between them is not talent or fortune or the favor of some distant god. The difference is what each of them decided in the deep interior, believe about themselves and the world in the wake of what happened. One took the experience as evidence of his unworthiness. The other took it as evidence of his resilience. Each of them faithfully, accurately produced a life that confirmed his own deepest assumption. This is not blame. This is liberation. Because if the assumption is the cause, you have access to the cause. Right now, in this very moment, you have access to the place where change begins. So how does it happen? How does one actually inhabit a new assumption deeply enough that the world receives the message? Not through the willful repetition of words, not through the forcing of a feeling that feels false. The imagination must be engaged genuinely, playfully, the full participatory aliveness of a child who is not performing a scene but living in it. You must enter in imagination the scene that implies the fulfillment of what you desire, not the desire itself, the fulfillment of it. Enter that scene. Find within it a single moment, the moment that could only exist if everything you are hoping for has already come to pass. A conversation you would be having, a texture of life you would be experiencing, the particular quality of ease that would live in your body if this were real and accomplished and here. Feel that, find the feeling, not the thinking about the feeling, the actual sensation of it in the body. Now stay there long enough that the body begins to believe it is real. Stay there long enough that the critical mind, the one that watches and evaluates, grows quiet. This is not effort. This is surrender, the relaxing of the grip, the willingness to let the imagination lead where logic refuses to follow. If you drift, if the old feeling reclaims its territory, and the familiar tightness of the old assumption returns, do not fight it. Do not scold yourself. And simply return. Return again and again to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, until it becomes not the thing you are reaching for, but the place you naturally reside. This is the turning of the night. This is the interior revolution. This is the thing that happens in the darkness, in the silence, the space between the world you have known and the world that is coming, the place that no one can see and therefore no one can explain, which is why they call it luck, which is why they call it fate, which is why they shrug and say the world is random. But you will know. You will know because you were there when it turned and morning comes. Not immediately always. Sometimes you sleep into the new assumption and wake the same day into a slightly different world. Sometimes the change accumulates quietly, and it is only weeks later that you turn and see how far you have traveled from where you began. But the direction is always the same. The world is always moving toward your deepest interior truth. However long the journey takes, however winding the road appears, people enter your life carrying exactly what this new version of you requires. Opportunities arise that would have passed the old you entirely, by not because the world has changed, but because the new you perceives them where the old you saw only obstacles or empty air. Doors that were not locked before, but that you never thought to push now, swing open at the slightest touch. Here is the thing about that. None of it will feel like a miracle to you, even though it will look like one to everyone watching. Because from the inside of the new assumption, this is simply how the world works. Of course, this door opened. Of course, this person arrived. Of course, this came to pass. It all feels natural. Not because you have grown numb to beauty, but because you have grown into the consciousness where beauty is simply the climate. The miracle is only visible to the person watching from the outside. To you standing inside the new life, it feels like home. There is one thing, one fatal, persistent temptation that I must warn you against, because it will undo the work more swiftly than anything else. Do not watch for the results. I know. I know how hard this is. You have planted the seed of the new assumption in the soil of your imagination, and every part of you wants to check the ground. Bend down and part the earth with your fingers and see whether something is growing. But the checking is its own act of consciousness, and what it broadcasts to the world is doubt. A doubt that peers between the boards of the fence to see if anything has changed is itself an assumption. It is the assumption that nothing has changed yet. You are still waiting, that the fulfillment is still somewhere outside you and not yet here. And the world, faithful as always, will reflect that assumption back. This does not mean you do nothing. It means you act from the feeling of the thing already accomplished, not toward it, as though it were still distant. You move through your days as the person who already possesses this, not pretending, not performing, being. Because that is what a person with an assumption does, they simply are it. And from that being, all action flows naturally and easily, and without the desperate quality of striving. Live in the end, not as a strategy, a truth you have decided to inhabit. Something happened to you before you were old enough to remember it. The world made an impression upon you. Impression settled into an assumption, and that assumption became the lens through which you have been reading every experience since. And your life, the whole extraordinary, painful, beautiful, bewildering arc of it, has been this assumption projected outward onto the screen of the world. Is the past. That chapter is written. But here is what I want to leave with you, what I want to seal into the deepest place in you as you go from this moment into whatever comes next. You're not the sum of what has been impressed upon you. You are the power that can impress. You are not the mirror. You are the light. The light can change its quality in an instant, in a breath, in the length of a single moment of genuine feeling turned toward what you desire to be true. Nobody tells you why life changes overnight, because the people who experience it don't fully understand it themselves. They only know that something moved in them. Some old weight fell away. Some new certainty took up residence in the place where doubt had lived so long. And then, as if the world itself exhaled, everything rearranged. You are not waiting for the world to give you permission to change. The world is waiting for you to stop asking it to. Go within. Find the feeling of the life you were born to live, not as a dream, not as a distant hope, but as a present truth felt fully in the body, breathed into the bones, held quietly in the heart, like a flame that does not flicker because it does not need the wind to sustain it. Hold that. Watch not with the anxious watching of someone who does not believe, but with the calm and open watching of someone who already knows. Watch the world begin to rearrange itself around the person you have decided, quietly and irrevocably, to become. The night turns, the morning comes. It always has. You are not the mirror. You are the light.